What is going on, everybody? We are back, and welcome to the season review, ranking, and pick'em. Basically, we are going to accomplish three things in this specific video. We are going to review the Terror season as a whole. Now, this isn't going to be done in the same way that all the other reviews have done. I am not going to sit here and recount every little thing that has happened for 10 plus episodes. That's 10 hours of stuff to cover. We're just going to talk about things that I liked, things that I didn't, stuff of that nature. Again, if you want more detailed information on episodes and what I thought about in more detail, please be sure to check out any of the reviews for any of the episodes you may be curious that I may have covered. After that, we will be ranking the Terror. I will discuss how that fits, and it's going to sound super stupid for this specific video, but bear with me for long-term goals here, all right? And then we'll be picking what we're covering next to take the place of the Terror in my rotation. So, with that being said, first things first, we're going to review the Terror Season 1, and I want you guys to understand this is definitely not my favorite single season of any specific season-long anthology series. Like, guys, I have seen most of American Horror Story. There's a couple seasons I have not seen, but I have seen most of American Horror Story. I have seen a little bit of season 1 of Channel Zero. I think there's one more show that does stuff in full Goosebumps. I saw the first season of Goosebumps. Second season's not out yet. And we're talking about the new as of 2024 to 2023-ish. I think it came out in 2023. Maybe it was 2024, early this year. Maybe late last year. And we're in December of this year, so I mean, whatever. But the first season of Goosebumps that had Justin Long in it, I saw that, and it was really good. That is not to downgrade this at all. I definitely think this is better than some of... This would be, in my opinion, middle of the package overall in terms of comparison with what I've seen of American Horror Story. Where I think this thing shines because it's an AMC production, I also think it falters in some areas because it's an AMC production, right? There is a pattern with AMC horror that I have noticed in my time of watching AMC horror. I say this tongue-in-cheek. There are only two things I've seen from AMC horror. Almost all of The Walking Dead, the main run of The Walking Dead, and then this one season of The Terror. I guess technically Chucky would fall under AMC horror, I think. So I guess I've seen that, but that's a different beast. That was manned by Mancini, so he was doing his own thing with that, and that was fun. At least the one season of that I saw. I didn't watch seasons 2 or 3. Anyways, I digress. Positive wise, production, acting, the people that got to fit the roles, the overall storytelling, I guess, is good. The story is good. And when I say that, I want you guys to understand something. I only missed the last 3.5 seasons of The Walking Dead. It was like, a 12, 13 season run. I stopped in like 11, I think. And it wasn't because I thought it got bad. I was still enjoying it, but I struggle with keeping up with TV shows. I'm being honest with you guys. Watching this for the channel is the only reason I watched this. It's not because it never looked good to me. I didn't even know it existed, even on Shudder, until this. I think I skimmed over it when looking through shows. Like when me and my fiance watch a show, we pretty much have only watched on Shudder every season of the Boulet Brothers, Dragula. Other than that, we haven't watched anything show-wise. We've definitely watched a bunch of movies on Shudder, but shows aren't our thing. My attention span almost doesn't work for these types of things. And again, if it wasn't for this channel, some of these shows would not be watched. Like, I've made it through the entire first season of The Twilight Zone. I am probably a fourth of the way through the first season of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. I've watched the entire season. We watched the entire season of the sci-fi one that I can't remember off the top of my head. It was set in Betaville. I just don't remember what it's called. I'm sorry. I can't remember what it's called right off the top of my head. And then we watched Armchair Thriller, the entire first season of that. So yeah, if it wasn't for this channel, I wouldn't have been doing all of that, right? But with that being said, I'm glad I did watch this. It was good. But it suffers from the AMC style of storytelling, the more dramatic AMC style of storytelling. And that's where a lot of it's storytelling. Towards the middle to end of the episode, something crazy happens to get your interest. It leaves you on a cliffhanger, and then you feel like you got to watch the next episode. Now, why this hurts is they're hour-long episodes. If you think about, if it airs on TV, it is an hour long. It's more like 45 to 50 minutes if you're watching it per episode. So when you're sitting there and you're like 30 minutes in and you're like, okay, not a whole lot's happened. There's story being told. You're paying attention because you're like, okay, I know some of this stuff is going to be important for later, and it almost always is. That's how AMC tells their stories. But then some crazy things happen. Like, I remember a lot of the episode that ended, I think it was like episode 7, maybe 8. Maybe it was episode 8, where dude sets the entire camp on fire, and a lot of people die. Most of that episode, you were just kind of like, all right, things are going. Boom, crazy shit happens. And then you're like, oh, now I got to watch the next episode. And then you get into the next episode, and in the beginning of the episode, you're just kind of like, okay, they're burning the bodies of the people that died. Cool. They're getting ready to move camp. Cool. Okay. And then they go. I don't think that was the one I was talking about. They didn't burn those bodies. A lot of them were already burned. But yeah, I mean, I mixed up 2 episodes there, and I do apologize. But you guys get the gist. That's kind of how this stuff goes. As far as the story that's being told, obviously I've never read the book, and I'm sure there are some people that watched this and then went and read the book and probably liked the book more. There are going to be people that read the book and then watched this and hated this show because it's nothing like the book. And now, I will say, I obviously can't say that it's nothing like the book. I don't read very much. I've been working on reading through Salem's Lot for the last 8 months. It's been a journey. I go many, many weeks without reading anything, and then I read a bunch, and then I don't read anymore, and then I go many, many, many weeks without reading. I'm also working on reading, I can't reach it, otherwise I'd show you. I'm also working on reading Cirque du Freak. It's a fun story. But no. The story in this, though, I did like a lot. Because it's something I wish they would have leaned more into, and this is going to sound really weird coming from me to anyone that actually knows me, because I typically hate when this happens in stories. I wish the way this story is being told, one of the things that they tried to do in a couple of the episodes is the episode will start off, or there will be periodic flashbacks of things that happened in England before the trip happens. And it's telling a little bit of backstory. That's where you learn that Crozier was Franklin was trying to marry Franklin's daughter. He loved her, but she didn't want to be with a sailor, captain or whatever, a seaman. She didn't want to be with a seaman. And because she didn't want to be with the seaman and all this other stuff, she turns him down. But she turns him down because her dad doesn't want her with a member of his crew, right? And it's cool that they told some of this backstory, but a lot of times it felt like the backstory being told. Not in that specific situation. It was needed to be told. I'm just saying that's just an example of them going in for the backstory. But there were several times where they went and told a little bit of backstory about things that happened beforehand or things that were going on in England, but then never pan out and never actually mean anything to the overall story. Like, they tell us several times that the ladies are trying to get people together to go look for her husband and the crew, and it never happens until the very, very end after everyone's dead. And they tell you that part of the story, and it's like, all right, cool. But no one in the crew thought that that England was going to send people to look for them. They don't know, and they never will know, that their loved ones are trying to gather people to go look for them. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. They're not sitting there wondering, man, I wonder if people are looking for us. So you're showing us this fight that the women are having in England, and it has no actual bearing on the overall story that's being told. Now, I don't know if in the book it does. But these are the types of things that I'm always going to knock on a series for. Is if you're telling me pieces of the story that just don't matter. And in this specific situation, because the crew is going through so much, knowing that their wives are trying to gather people just does not matter, because it has no bearing on the overall story that's being told with the people from the Terror. Obviously, we know that their families love them, but it doesn't matter. But on the flip side, one of my other issues with this, with the lack of a lot of there are big segments of the show where the Tumbach is the main villain. The main villain. I use air quotes. He's not really a villain. For the most part, he's controlled through the majority of the first part of the series. Until Silna loses him. But you'll have moments where he's a big presence. He kills several people and disappears. And then he's just a looming threat, right? Like, I don't know if you guys ever watched The Walking Dead. I love The Walking Dead. And one of the reasons I love The Walking Dead is it paints more of the threat that people are as opposed to the zombies, right? And I know that turns a lot of people off, but that's something that I found more intriguing. I don't like zombies. I think zombies are boring. Zombie stories are typically boring. But The Walking Dead made it more of a people study. And I could definitely believe people would be worse than the zombies themselves, and oftentimes they are. And that works in a series like The Walking Dead, where the zombies are always a looming threat, but it's always the people around that are more of a danger. There's not enough people in this for them to follow that same formula. So you run into this where the Tumbach is always a looming threat. He's somewhere out there. But you're building up Hickey as like the main villain of this whole thing. And at any given point, it would be easy to take him out. Like, the people that follow him aren't following him blindly. Like, if you, again, using The Walking Dead, think of the governor, think of Negan. Like, these are two guys that played main villains in a season or three. And they had everybody following them to a T. They're Captain, like almost to the old Captain, my Captain point, right? They're following these men blindly, and whether it was the governor losing his family which is why he went crazy, or whatever Negan's reason was, because I can't remember right off the top of my head. Whatever reason between the two of them, or Shane being the villain of basically being the villain of season 1 or 2. I think 2. I think 2 is the season that he dies in. They are the villains of their seasons, but they feel big, and they've got followings. The people following Hickey are honestly only doing it because they're scared of dying in the cold. It's not that they really care for Hickey. And they even show that they're planning almost a mutiny of their own against Hickey because they find out Hickey's just psychotic. So it didn't feel like the big bad of this season specifically was built in a way that we cared for Hickey being a big bad. Was he crazy? Yes, which are typically my favorite types of villains. But I will say this. I love that they didn't stray from the gore of the show, right? You definitely see some crazy things, like the guy, like you get the dude that they had to cut open his head and you see his brain, but he's like laying there in a coma. He's alive, but he's missing like the skull of his, like, it's wild. There's some wild things gore wise. They play into some things that are really cool. Like I love the Inuit being involved. I do love the characterization of a lot of the main characters, especially like, Sir John Franklin kind of having this relationship with Crozier, and then at the same time, let me see what the character. There's one guy, Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald's the other one that I always forget his name. So you'll get Fitzgerald, who him and John Franklin just are not clicking with Crozier. Crozier's trying to do what he thinks is right by sending out a crew to finally get some help because they're trapped in the middle of this ice, and Sir John Franklin is telling him no at every turn. Crozier becomes an alcoholic during all of this. Fitzpatrick or Fitzgerald, whatever the fuck his name is, Fitzsimmons. I think Fitzsimmons was from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What the fuck is his name? Fitzjames. James Fitzjames. Him and Crozier can't stand each other. But then after Sir John Franklin dies finally from the Toon Bach, and Crozier takes over, he becomes a raging alcoholic. Almost loses everyone. He decides to go through DTs and get himself off of the alcohol. And then the rest of the season, up until when Fitzjames dies, him and Fitzjames start to build this bond together where they fully understand each other. And Fitzjames tells him, he's like, dude, I'm a fake. And he explains he's not even really British. He came from somewhere else, was accepted by people into this thing. And that's how that goes. So they build this bond, and then they kill off people. One of the things this show has against it being a anthology series, they try really hard to get you to care about the characters as much as they can in a one season setting, right? So but the problem is it's a bunch of unlikable characters. There's a couple likable ones. Obviously Crozier, you're rooting for him by the end of it. He becomes the sole survivor of the entire group. You're always rooting for Mr. Good Sir. You start to root for Fitzjames towards the end there once he gets his head out of his ass. And several others. You're rooting against Hickey because Hickey's just an absolute twat of a human being. But yeah, you're rooting for all of these. You start to root for all these people, and they start to get killed off, and you're like, oh, well, that sucks, but it is what it is. Whereas, like, when you're watching, again, The Walking Dead is the only thing I got to compare to as far as AMC horror goes, and I apologize for that, guys. But since it's set up it's just telling one long, big story, you're building connections with all these characters. So when, Dale dies, you've had a couple seasons of him being a character you're rooting for. When he finally dies, like, you're torn up about it. When they find Sophia in season 2 in the barn, you're torn up about it. When you kill off Glenn, you're torn up about it. Like, it's just, you get torn up about things because you have way more time with these characters stretched over. Like when Carl dies, you're torn up about it. More so because you think he's the main character of the story, anyways, and then he just wants to finish schooling, so he gets killed off in the show. I hated that. But yeah, so it's hard to connect with a lot of these characters because most of them are so unlikable for most of it. Like, I was actively rooting against Sir John Franklin. I was like, he's just trying to be so proper and trying to do the right thing by England, but not the right thing by his crew. And he's so blind to see it, and he doesn't agree with anyone until it's too late. And it's like, bruh, how did you become a captain? So, with that being said, though, ladies and gentlemen, my biggest problem with this show was the end. The very end, not most of the episode itself, but the very end, where somebody from home, England being home, not his physical house, coming and looking for anyone, but him telling them to let them think that everyone's dead. He doesn't want to go back to England. He's got somebody there that would actually love to be with him. He's got tons of people that I feel should know the story. And I feel like he is the type of person to tell the entire truth of everything. He's got no reason to hide anything. Like, a lot happened. And I think that's a story people would want to know. That's the story of Legends. Being the sole survivor of one of the craziest voyages. Now, obviously, there's going to be people that don't believe in the Toon Bach portion of it, but it's like, what can you do? And I feel like that's really what dragged it down. Like, I was enjoying everything that was going on in the story, even with the slow pacing, a lot of the crazy stuff that was going on throughout the seasons. But the end of it, it's like all of a sudden you're just like, no, I'm gonna stay with the Inuits. I'm good. I'm just gonna sit out here in the frigid, freezing cold, moving around a wasteland, eating cold seal for the rest of my life. That's what I want to do. But yeah. Now, remember, I said we were going to rank season 1, and I want you to understand how this is going to work. This sounds so pointless right now. It does, and I admit that. But I want you to understand something. I'm doing this because as time goes on, regardless of how many months or years it takes to get there, as long as I'm doing this, and then we hit up to display capture. Come on, display capture. I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of the series name as well. There's no reason to keep that up. This will expand as we watch more seasons of things. So as goofily as this sounds, we're ranking season 1. And what that means is this is the first full season. Now we're going to only combine all the full seasons. For anyone that watches these rankings, usually we rank individual episodes. But since full season shows are just telling one big story, as we cover them here on this channel, any full season stories will be ranked amongst other full season stories. So basically, it's going to be Goosebumps, The Terror, Channel Zero, and there's one other one somewhere out there I can't remember off the top of my head. Those are going to be what's ranked. And since we've only covered one show, number 1 currently is The Terror, season 1. So there you go for that. That's our ranking. I hope it was enjoyable. Again, I know it's dumb. I know it is dumb. But it is what it is. Alright, how we get out of this fucking thing. There we go. Now, with that being said, let's pull back up to display capture. We're gonna pick our next thing, ladies and gentlemen. these are always some of my most excited parts, and then I always get something that I'm like, what is that? Even though I was excited for the terror because it was something new that I'd never seen before. Um, so per the norm, shuffle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've shuffled it 5 times. And we are now going to spin. Let me turn on desktop audio so you can hear all the fun noises that this stupid thing makes. And we will see what is the next horror anthology pick'em that we got. Real quick, there is one thing I will not accept currently, and it's only because if I'd have stayed on top of things, I would have. I was like 2.5, 3 weeks ahead. I am now barely a week ahead. I will not accept Armchair Thriller until I'm in a situation where I'm like 3 to 4 weeks ahead, because it might take me that long to get through the show. It's not that the show itself is long. It's usually like 30 episodes, but each story is 4 to 6 episodes, and that's a lot to watch at any one given time. And that's how I'm doing those. So I need set weekends to work on stuff like that. But I am super excited to see what we're going to watch. So we're going to click the button and go. Drum roll. What is Too Twisted? Okay. I don't know what that is. Let's find out. It's an Australian TV mystery anthology drama. Interesting. Let's see if we can find a place to watch it. I'm going to pause this. You're not going to notice it. It's just going to be like a cut. We'll be right back. All right, guys. So I did find a place to watch it. It is available on YouTube. So that is where we're going to watch it. Now, with that being said, I saw about 15 seconds just to make sure. It's going to be in some pretty bad quality. It looks like it's from the early 2000s. It's on YouTube, which means it's going to be heavily compressed. I will try to find a clearer place to watch it. I don't think it's available in HD anywhere is the problem. In fact, if I go to voodoo.com, yeah, I don't want any of those things. What do I call it? Too Twisted? Yeah, there's no Too Twisted here at all. So it's not on Voodoo or Fandango. And I wouldn't know where else to even begin to look for it. So yeah, that's pretty much how that's going to go. We're going to be watching it. I'm not going to pay for it anyways if I got access to it for free. And here's how it works. Again, we cover one story per episode. There are 7 episodes being shown here, and each episode has 2 stories. Now, both the stories will have something that connects them in some way, shape, or form. However, since they are still 2 stories per episode, I will be watching 1 story per review per watch along. So there will be 14 episodes that we will be covering for Too Twisted. I am excited for this. I'm not gonna lie. It's Australian horror, and it looks like the way they set it up. Look at this dude: 25 views, 25 views, 31 views, 40 views. Apparently not watched by anyone. but it looks like they sent in for people to send stuff to them, and then they made stories out of it and did the same thing with directors. They had directors try out for it and stuff, and then they filmed this and put it on TV. So I'm excited to check this out. It'll be interesting to go through. It looks like in the first episode alone, the little bit that I've seen, it looks like one of the actresses is somebody I've seen in something before. So it'll be interesting to see who all might show up in this. Because like I said, it looks like it came out in 2006. So, but yeah, guys, that is going to do it. We'll at least have a way to watch it. So there is that. So that being said, I love you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.